Pociąg region do stacji Katowice przez stację Kraków-Łódź, Kraków-Mdrowniki, Krzeszowice, Durowa, Trzebnia. Stoi na torze drugim, przy peronie trzecim. Planowy odjazd pociągu o godzinie 8:08.
Hello and welcome to the pilot episode of our podcast dedicated to SimRail. I'm Chancellor and I will be your host, and with me is Sparkles, my co-host. Hello, Sparkles.
Hello.
At first, just a disclaimer, we are not affiliated with SimRail or SimCall companies.
We are just players of the game and big fans, and we're not professional drivers or signalers, even though I want to become one in the future. So please don't expect us to be correct on everything, and feel free to leave feedback in the comments on this video or at our Gmail that we will take later in the episode.
The main topic of this episode will be the elephant in the room, the DLC Łódź, which was new content for SimRail released a good month and a half ago. The main part added by the DLC is of course the new route, which was the extension from Żyrardów, Skierniewice, Koluszki up to Łódź Widzew, with the intermediate stations of course. With the DLC we also have significant patch content and hotfixes. Could you tell us about it, Sparkles?
Yeah, well, we got a bunch of content even with the update. It was more than just a route. We got stuff like new select menus in the server search, where we now can mark servers as our favorites and they will show up on top. And we can also sort by vehicle type in the train selection menu. They also added the EN57 919 livery to the game, which was a huge thing with the DLC. But after the DLC release, we also got a few bugs that were later fixed. Like at Rogov Station, there was a problem with the signal giving 60 kilometers an hour, but you derailed at 50. And the developers fixed this by adding a temporary 50 and 40 kilometer speed limit.
Yeah, this temporary speed limit still gives me jump scares when I am traveling, because the arrow to the right that the speed limit is related to the right track is quite small. If you are traveling fast, it's hard to notice it, and yeah, I had to sometimes prevent myself from emergency brakes and so on. So yeah,
I've thrown the emergency brake on way too many times.
With the DLC we also have new bugs introduced. Some of them are reported and already promised to be fixed in the next update, which is the sentence which we often hear in SimRail environment. But anyhow, the first one I would like to mention is Płótwia, the small stations to the west of Skierniewice. The track most northern in the plan, track 4, is now currently bugged, which prevents you from siding the trains there, because you will get the notifications that the route is incorrect. And fun fact is that Kujonek 2 mentioned, one of the developers mentioned that this problem exists because, well, they forgot to connect the signals in this track to the Płótwia station, which is quite funny. It's the first time I heard such an expression. But at the same time, Kujonek confirmed that there will be a fix to that, most likely in the next update, as we like to hear. Have you tried siding a train there in Płótwia, Sparkles?
I actually haven't dispatched the Płótwia because it's almost always occupied, and I haven't tried fighting for it yet.
Yeah, it's a relatively small station, but it's quite tricky. I actually tried the siding like some freight trains there, and in some cases the substitute signal work, sometimes it doesn't. Someone suggested that if the substitute doesn't work, you can try to set exit route correctly to the west, further to the west, so that the game somehow notices it. But yeah, hopefully it will be fixed. We will not have to play with the tricks to put the trains there. Next up is a big problem for many people at Skierniewice, one of the large, it's quite great signaling stations. The problem is with the intersections, switches, which leads towards Bełchów, which is the north route on the map. The problem is that you cannot send trains simultaneously in the parallel lines, which on the plan look like you should be able to, but the routes block each other, both switches and signals. So very often you cannot send trains to Bełchów and from Bełchów, for example. And this has been confirmed also by Kujonek, and he said the correction needs to be done, of course, but it's not trivial. So if it was trivial, they should have done it already, but apparently they need to rewrite the whole protection systems for switches and semaphores. So something went wrong in there. And we don't have a confirmation it will be fixed, but at least we know they realize the problem exists. There is also the problem of the semaphore A21 in Skierniewice, which is a signal releasing the trains towards Radziwiłów Mazowiecki and Żyrardów. The problem with the signal is that it often stays red and you cannot do anything about it. You cannot give SZ, you cannot cancel the signal. Most likely this happens when you cancel the route or you cancel in the fast way. Oh, this is my ignorance and me lacking like professional vocabulary about the canceling and swift canceling or emergency canceling of routes.
I think it's called immediate route cancellation.
Thank you very much. Anyhow, if you want to avoid, you have a good chance to avoid this lockout of the signal 821 semaphore if you don't cancel signals there, especially in this immediate cancelling. Even if you leave the station, the bots cannot fix it, so it's quite harsh bug in my opinion. Next up we have the bug with the broken windshield. This is the bug which started appearing after the DLC. And just today, which by the way is the 11th of June, I have learned that this graphic and this whole broken windshield was a part of the game from the very beginning. And it just happens that the DLC somehow released the trigger or make the trigger more,
It just happens more often.
It happens more often, yeah, which was not planned. And Aridor said that he's guessing that this, because I asked why would we even have this in game, right? Someone did the graphics. Maybe there's even sound. I don't know, because it never happened to me. Did it happen to you?
No, it never happened to me. I just know that my friend sent me a picture of it and said nice windows, but it never happened to me.
Right, so Aridor says it's probably like maybe like leftover from the professional simulator.
I've heard this theory as well.
Yeah, and this is probably like detection if a driver didn't stop, in front of some collision item. Or it was used most likely when you derail in some fancy way and your locomotive drops down or something like that. But this we have confirmation it will be fixed.
We also have differences between the UI timetable and the paper timetable, and this is due to the timetables in game on the paper being generated by a third party, and they're not always correct or identical to the in-game ones, which makes it so that some people have missed their stops and just drove past them. So you should always take a look at the UI timetable and see that it matches the paper timetable, or just use the UI one.
Yeah, so with the SimRail Express service, we hope it will be updated for the current status of the game. And as Sparkles noted, always check the UI of the game, because this is what the game expects you to do, which includes bots routing you to the stations and so on. The main differences are with the PH stops. So in the timetables, it's most common that you will not have a pH shown there, but there will be one in the UI. Okay, with the DLC, we also noticed split in the servers, splitting of the routes. And this is most likely the lesser evil which the developers made the sacrifice because of that. Because we, even after a launch, even with the splits, we often suffered quite a lot of lags, especially in the peak time in Europe. Most noticeably, it was visible during signaling. Like you couldn't set the signals. There was a big delay between setting a signal, or I should rather say a route, and the route actually appearing. And I am not talking about the newly added also automatic crossings, which delays naturally setting the route because they need to close, then the route is confirmed. But yeah, just with the lag. Did you have a lot of lag problems or issues, especially after the launch, Sparkles?
No, I think I didn't play much when the server had the peak popularity, so I didn't notice much lag, and I was driving fine. But as well, I wasn't dispatching much at all, so it might have been worse for dispatchers.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. It was most noticeable by the signalers, I think, and I was mostly signaling. I was affected by this. What do you think about the split of the servers? Because this caused quite a lot of stir in the community.
I think it's quite sad now because everyone is playing on the Łódź DLC or ŁódźDLC server, and some people are not doing it because they want to play on the Łódź DLC, but because it's the server with the most players, and it's quite boring when I want to drive to Katowice, for example, and there's nobody on the server down to Katowice. And it's also like for the international players, I think it's due to the lack of players on the server down to Katowice, but also the change of the time zone. So you have to change your time by an hour when hopping over to the other server.
Right. Yeah, but still, if we look at the lag issues, even with the split, we had the lag issues. So I wonder how it would be with the full routes. Well, surely they tested it and they weren't ready to release it with the full routes. But since then, we have seen some steps towards improving the situation. And the first step was the test server, which was launched on 23rd of May. The name of the server is KU1, which is most likely coming from Królik Uszasty, one of the most active developers we have on Discord. When on the first day, everyone showed with the ping of at least 200 milliseconds. I had the luck to log in to Koluszki and I was signaling for, I don't know, perhaps 4 hours or something like that. Even Królik Uszasty was driving there and he added some trains to the sides because at most there were like 15 players, maybe 20. So there were suggestions for him to add more trains to, since we want to try the traffic and the lag, so we wanted to have more trains. So anyhow, he deliberately added more trains to Koluszki. Some players were also on purpose slowing down traffic to also force more trains present on the server. And I did not notice the typical lag problems. So that was quite fun. The KU1 server was, of course, with the old split route, but it had a new hardware. And we don't know what hardware it had or has, because it's still active as far as I know. But we also know that the Królik Uszasty is testing less restarts per day. So it was, as far as I remember, it was KU1 restarts are planned to be at 4 a.m. and 2 p.m. So only 2 restarts per servers. What do you think about the restarts? Do they influence you or impact you? Do you hate them? What's your opinion?
I mean, I've seen a lot of people getting super mad about the restarts, but I mean, it's a bit annoying when you are not planning for them, and like you're early with the freight train. You're so happy that you're early, and then the restart hits you, and you get back like 30 minutes of progress, and it's quite sad. But I mean, as a dispatcher as well, they have helped me a ton when trains have like been blocked from previous dispatchers or from the AI. So they have some good benefits, and sometimes they're just annoying. But I mean, the good stuff they do outweigh being a bit annoying every now and then.
Yeah, I would actually like to see like some warning, right? Like, of course, there are unplanned restarts, like servers get blocked and so on, and the developers are just like manually forcing the restarts. But for the planned restarts, like it would be nice to have like a, I don't know, like 15-minute warning, right? Or 10-minute warning. Like when you log, especially when you log in, like you're happy, oh, I got this nice train, I will make the full 3-hour route, and then after 10 minutes you are kicked out. And of course, after their servers are back, you cannot pick up the train because it's occupied.
I think as well there could be like a box in the train select menu where it's like this train might be affected by restarts. If it's a 3-hour journey and there's a restart in the coming 3 hours, it could warn you beforehand. So before you pick the train, you would know that it might be affected by a restart.
Yes, or like on the like server selection, right, list. Just next to the server, the server is planned to restart in 10 minutes or something like this, like some kind of warning. Also, like in the game, when you finish a scenario and when you have server restart, like sometimes it's like, I don't know, it's very abrupt. The screen like stops for a second and then you get like the game over screen almost, right? But it just it's quite sudden. Like it could be like some smoother transition, or with this warning, it would be like you would be prepared for the restart. So
yeah, as well. And does it even like say server restart when you get that menu? Because I know there are a lot of people joining the Discord and being like, "What happened? Why is the server down?" Because there's nowhere in the game where it says that server restarts happens. You just need to know it from the forum or from the Discord.
I want to say that there is, because you get the like game over screen and the notification of the reason.
Oh, I didn't know it said like server restart. I thought it said like just. Well, actually, I haven't paid attention, so I can't say much. But I know like if you don't know about it before, it's quite sad as well, because you weren't expecting it, and when you get the menu, you might just think that you got kicked or something. Because not everyone doesn't read the entire thing.
Yeah, it's easy to click it out, before reading. But I'm pretty sure there is a message for the server restart, so you know the reason. It's just like everything happens quite abruptly. Right, so the K1, it was quite successful test, and it did go for the planned lesser restarts, and as far as I know, the server was also tested for only one restart in like 18 hours or something like this, so Królik Uszasty sometimes share those information. Sadly, there are not many people playing there, and of course it would be way beneficial if we have a lot of people playing there, because then the developers will get more data, and I think this is what we wanted, right? We always wanted to have some share in the development of the game, and now we have it, so I encourage everyone to check those test servers. I think for some servers you need the next version, basically the beta version of the game, because there is another server. It was int9, I believe, right?
Yeah, int9 is usually the one getting the next version. It was before the DLC. It got the DLC update as well.
Yeah, so we have all those servers, and the more people play it there, the more developers will get data, and hopefully this will translate into more frequent updates and fixes for us. So go check them out if you can. Okay, next part is the DLC part 2. Well, I should mention maybe first that for me it was quite a surprise that the DLC Łódź was actually split into 2 parts, because I have to confess I had a break from the game for I guess about 2 months. So when I came back, I bought the DLC and I thought we are done. And apparently the devs decided to split the Łódź in 2 parts, which is A good thing about it is, of course, that we have new content earlier, and with SimRail, we are always, of course, happy when we have new content. It's not so frequent, but DLC Part 2 is still coming. We don't know when. I believe we had a confirmation that it will be released this year, so 2025, but no month or no date, of course, were given. As for the content of DLC Part 2, the stations which will be included, because the main part will, of course, be the extension of the Łódź route. The first information we can find is in the game. There is a sign which is showing the project information of the extension of the few of the lines, and it says it will be Jaktorów, Koluszki, Łódź Widzew. This is what we have. And next up is Łódź Kaliska Towarowa and Pabianice. Since this is in the game, I believe it is safe to assume that those stations will be part of the DLC Part 2. I have also spotted that Wetam, one of the developers, mentioned there will be Sieradz as well in the DLC Part 2, which Sieradz is, when we look at the map, it's quite a bit further to the west from Łódź, west and a little bit of south. And as we remember, Łódź Widzew is just the entry station towards Łódź from the east. So we have the whole Łódź, further down south, and west is Sieradz, which was confirmed by Wetam. It was also confirmed by him that DLC Part 2 will be similar in size of the route to DLC 1, which is of course nice to hear, because the route and also the price. We haven't talked about the price of DLC 1. Let's digress shortly. Were you surprised by the pricing of the DLC 1?
Yeah, I was very surprised. I was expecting to lay down all my money, all my savings and everything on the DLC. But I was like, no, this is actually cheap. I can actually afford groceries and stuff this week.
Yeah, I wonder if it was, when it was split up by 2, it was also 50% of the planned price of the DLC. Since Wetam confirmed that it's similar in size, I guess it's safe to assume that it will be also in price to DLC 1. The next source of the stations we may have is unofficial source, so take it with a grain of salt. But this source showed some footage which included the extension to the route towards Rokiciny. And Rokiciny is currently it's a train sync from Koluszki. It goes to the south, and the unofficial, unconfirmed source says there will be extension there. And this extension was not mentioned by, I believe, anyone from the devs. So let's hope so, but we'll see. The stations included supposedly is Baby, Sędzice, and Piotrków Trybunalski, which Piotrków Trybunalski is quite a big city and probably station. I don't know, I haven't been there in real life yet, but I'm guessing it will be nice large station to play in, if of course it's playable. But the same unofficial source mentions stations and routes around Łódź city. So if you go from Widzew, we can go north and we can go south. And I believe the stations, when you go towards south, these are the stations which are mentioned by the table. If you go north, we have stations like Łódź Stoki, Łódź Marysin, Łódź Warszawska, Łódź Arturówek, up to Zgierz, which is the city. I guess it's not yet a district of Łódź, but it's a city to the north of Łódź. And then the route is supposedly going back south and to the west of Łódź, through Łódź Żabiniec, Łódź Kaliska, and both routes meet at Redkinia. We'll see if it will be realized in the game. Let's hope so, of course, but this is completely unconfirmed info.
Yeah, but Redkinia is also something we have heard before from the devs in a sneak peek, so it's a qualified guess at least.
Yes, as I said, both routes meet at Redkinia. It's just the northbound route I have just mentioned is not confirmed anywhere from the unofficial site, which I would not like to mention. You've mentioned sneak peeks. Maybe you could talk about where can we find them and what stations are included?
Yeah, well, you can find the sneak peeks on the forum like usual, but they're very split like between sneak peeks and the devlogs we used to get. But the ones that we still haven't gotten in game that have been mentioned are mapped on the map.simrail.app website, and you can enable the sneak peeks layer in the bottom right corner. And you can see some stuff about the German DLC, and you can also see the WODS stuff that we haven't gotten, which is Redkinia signal box and the Redkina station, and the WODS Lubinek station, and the Pabianice station.
Since we got sneak peeks, as I said, this is pretty safe bet that we will have them. So again, you can check them on the map. The sneak peeks needs to be selected in the filters in the bottom right, which is quite useful because you also see the marks on the map. So you can see how the route will continue. What we will not get for sure is Łódź Fabryczna. This has been confirmed by 2 developers. So Bartłomiej Skwara mentioned, and let me quote this: Łódź Fabryczna is not included in the DLC because the railway infrastructure in the city center is under major reconstruction due to the building of a new underground tunnel connecting the stations. And now an important part, it is better to show this fragment after the investment is completed. I should also mention, because I was in Łódź last weekend, and I actually visited the Łódź Fabryczna station, which is really beautiful station. It's quite modern, but it's very interesting. It has very interesting architecture. But one of the main things is it's a dead-end station. So it's a station which goes like into the city and like stops there. And because in the game we don't have reversing and we don't have despawning at stations, it's currently not possible to send trains there and also, well, to receive there, because they would need to just disappear and appear inside. And because it's such a nice and large station, this is why the city in real life is digging a tunnel to make it go to the west through the city to join with the other lines surrounding Łódź. And this will become the, I'm guessing, main station of Łódź. It's really a shame that it's not used more. I believe it's mostly used for regional trains because of the reversing thing. But it's really nice architecture. If you are curious, I encourage you to check out in the internet for the pictures. Maybe we will also post some pictures in the YouTube footage for to see. Really nice station, which we'll not get in the DLC part 2, of course. This will also require quite a lot of work from the graphics, I guess, because of the special architecture of the train station Łódź Fabryczna. We have mentioned the price, so we expect a similar pricing, but I'm guessing even if the price was higher for some reason, I guess we are all fans of the game and we would probably stomach the small price increase. Not much, but small price increase. That's fine.
Well, let's talk about what's coming after the DLC. So we have heard about the Skoda locomotive, and we've also heard of a German route and American route, but they haven't been talked about for quite a long time.
We know, or it was said back then, that both German route and American will be made by third-party contractors, and with it also most likely the new locomotive will be added, so it's quite a big project. You can see the sneak peeks of what was done also in the map, which Sparkles mentioned before. They are also like located more or less where they are expected to be. And with the Skoda locomotive, it was actually mentioned not that long ago by Królik Uszasty that there will be a locomotive which is more noisy than Track's locomotive. He didn't mention Skoda, but someone sent me the footage of the Skoda locomotive. Sorry, I forgot the symbol of the model, the precise symbol. But yeah, we can check what Skoda locomotive it is. Someone sent me a video footage from the cabin in real life, and this thing is really noisy, like with this static noise is quite unbearable. So I guess I will be playing with even louder music than I normally do while playing, because even tracks is quite noisy for me. What about you? Do you have problems with the tracks, static sound?
I don't have a problem with the volume really. It's more like that it's an annoying sound. I don't like the pitch of it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. This I couldn't put it better words. Yeah, but you're right. It's the pitch thing. So we'll see. And it was mentioned by Krulik maybe 3 weeks ago, mid-May, not like a year ago. So here's hoping.
Yeah, well, they also, I think I've read somewhere on the forum that the model was done, but it was getting worked on, like getting imported into the game. But that was like quite long ago, and we haven't heard anything more than that.
Yeah, we also heard from, I believe it was Moritz, the German moderator, also for the English channel, that the part of the developers, they switched to working on the professional simulators, so there is perhaps less people working on the current SimRail content, temporarily, I'm guessing, so maybe it will slightly slow down, but this doesn't have to be, because maybe these are the people not related to like scenery graphics of the routes, so perhaps they were not needed for the just simple route extension. Let's hope so. So this is the DLC. We hope it will be as promised this year. And since this year I expect somewhere around Christmas, it will be nice Christmas present, but we'll see.
Maybe on New Year's Eve.
Or yeah, that's like like with the DLC 1, right? They said they will release it in April, and it was in the last day of April, so they kept their promise. So no complaints here. Okay, that's about DLC. Another topic I would like to touch on is the update to the Polish regulations concerning railways. The update in real life in Poland was signed on the 15th of April, and the regulations, at least part of them, went online in Poland, I believe mid-May. Some of the update to the regulations are not related to SimRail because we don't have the representation of them, but there are a few which could be represented in the game, but they are not yet, and we don't know whether or not they will be updated. But there are a few I would like to mention. The first update is to the RP1 signal, so our horn. The signs which we have in the game require us to horn before almost every crossing, and now the requirement will be reduced to only crossings which are unguarded. The regulation gives an example that on the line Warszawa-Poznań, which we don't have in the game, the reduction of the signals is reduced from 139 to 9. I believe this will be a big relief to the people living next to such crossings. However, whether or not we will see it in the game, we will see how it goes. But there is this gossip I've heard. I have never confirmed it, but someone told me that the developers increased the signs which requires you to give RP1, so they increased the amount in the game because players were complaining that they don't have much to do during driving, which is, whether it's good or not, I will leave this discussion to the listeners. Because of that, I am not expecting, if it's true, I am not expecting the developers to introduce it, but maybe they would like to be as close to the current rules as possible. The next update is related to new brake signs, which I believe these are the signs with the train length by the platforms. But those brake signs, they will be introduced on the 14th of December 2025 in Poland. And this is, I believe, when the new timetable of trains in Poland are released for the next year. So those new brake signs are not even present in Poland. I'm curious how they will look like. I don't know what to expect of them. Maybe there will be more train length, I'm not sure. But as we know, we still have some problems with stopping at the platforms for PH trains where the train stop is not registered by the game, even if you stop at the brake sign related to your train length. So Perhaps this would force the developers to redo and correct all the stopping spots by the platforms. Have you got any problems with stopping and game registering your PH stop, Sparkles?
Not that much. I mean, it happens sometimes if I just took like over from the AI, and they're usually at spawn stations, and it registers the first stop like a skipped stop, and then it usually doesn't show up like stopping at the station for my first station, and sometimes it's been like I stop exactly where it wants me to, or where I believe it wants me to stop, but it still doesn't fully register.
Yeah, you can add also those trains which like spawns with the game thinking you skipped one station, and you get minus 1,000 points for that, and the skipped station is not playable in the game. So we still have those problems. I play without the UI, but I switched the F3 tooltips and notifications because I had a few occasions where I stopped at the platform and I was waiting happily for my whistle to move on, and it didn't come. When I turned on the UI after some time, I see that the game didn't register that I stopped. After 2 or 3 times like that, I decided to press F3 to give me those notifications that I can stop now, which is for me to be safe that the game registered the PH. Okay, coming back to the updates, there is an increase of the speed limit for driving on unknown line for 40 to 60 kilometers for passenger trains in an extraordinary situations. This is not related to SimRail, but I wanted to point out that in general, all those updates are towards better flow of the trains. The Polish railway is apparently so safe currently, they could release a little bit of the stretch and tension for the drivers, which I like to see. This shows the trust of the Minister of Minister of Infrastructure, I believe, who signed those rules. Okay, but what we have in the game is the increase of speed limit from 20 to 40 kilometers per hour for continuing driving after passing red signal on SBLs, or ABS in English. So this is where, when you are on a route which is controlled by SBLs, if you have red light, after you stopped, you can pass the red signal at 20 kilometers per hour, and the speed limit is valid until the next signal. And this is not always recommended because often the distance between signals, the sections with SBLs, can be quite long. So traveling at 20 from one signal to another can be sometimes more lengthy than just simply waiting for the route to clear. But now with these regulations, we have the increase from 20 to 40 kilometers per hour, which is a nice increase. So maybe it will make me actually trying that, because I believe I have tried it only once and then I passed, because traveling at 20, yeah, it may be troublesome. Another thing is added new sign, W21A. This sign is optional, distant sign for W21. Let me remind you, the W21 is the sign on semaphore which increases the speed of the semaphore showing you reduce speed. So for example, the semaphore showing 40 kilometers per hour, it may have a 5 underneath. It can be either a sign or like illuminated lights, which tells you that even if you have the signal for 40 kilometers per hour, you can travel at increased speed of 50. Currently, we need to know the route where to expect it, so that you know you don't have to slow down as much. But with the W21A sign, you will be warned that the next signal will have this increased speed. It's never decreased, it's always increased, so you know you will not have to brake as much, which is nice. I believe it's a nice addition. However, it is an option sign, so I'm curious which stations will get this nice extra treatment. There's also new signs for speed limits, and I can see here the signs for temporary speed limits. I believe it's also for standard speed limits, but correct me if I'm wrong. The difference is that now the signs can have decimal numbers. So I believe this will be towards increased speed. Instead of 30, we can have 35, but not 40. So again, probably the way to improve the flow of the trains in Poland. As far as I know, it wasn't mentioned that we will get it in the game. But maybe the DLC 2 would be a nice occasion to add those changes. There are more changes and updates which are completely not related to SimRail, so I will skip those. There were also 2 more updates to the updated regulations, and I have to confess I haven't checked them. Well, I treat them as perhaps hotfixes after feedback of drivers and signalers, which the ministry quite swiftly corrected. Okay, with the updates done, we have some miscellaneous news. First up is Królik Uszasty expressed a positive approach to creating TIE 2, our only steam locomotive, which is currently only in single player, as a passenger train in the Łódź area. The main limitation of the steam locomotive is of course the strength and speed limits. The problem is it might slow down other trains, but Królik Uszasty said it's quite possible to add it to our timetable, which would be great, because I have to confess that I have only tried steam locomotive to get the achievement of exploding the boiler. How about you, Sparkles? Have you tried steam locomotive? Do you like it?
Yeah, I've tried it once or twice, and once was just to explode the boiler to get the achievement. But the second time I was actually driving, and it's quite fun to drive, but I think the tutorial was a bit bugged back when I was doing it, because I somehow drained all the water in the tank and it exploded without the intention to do it.
Oh, so you got the achievement without planning it.
Exactly. Well, I did it the first time with planning, but the second time I already had the achievement and it exploded on me.
Interesting. I like this fireman part. I believe also in the English version he speaks Polish, right?
Yeah, he shouts out the signals in Polish.
Yeah, that's actually quite fun part, because the visibility is of course quite limited in the steam locomotive. The AI shouting it, I think it's a nice addition. Maybe it's also the regulation for those steam locomotives, like both of the persons in the cabin need to confirm that they see the same sign. I don't know. I believe you also play mainly the multiplayer part, so adding the steam locomotive to the multiplayer would be a great addition. It would be actually it would feel like a steam locomotive DLC, right? If they added it to the multiplayer, because I think it's safe to say that most of the people play SimRail for its multiplayer part. Actually, I have a short story, like in real life story, related to the steam locomotive. I have an uncle which worked at PKP as a mechanic. He was repairing the locomotives, and he was living in a village. He had to travel to Ława Główna, which is a city in the northern part of Poland. He had problems with getting to Ława on time, so he and his friends noticed that there is a steam locomotive coming through the station, through the village, but it doesn't stop there. So they contacted the driver and they asked him to stop just for them, because they work in the same company, and they agreed to stop there, and they entered the steam locomotive all together. I believe there were 4 people in total. It was a freight train or some technical train, so there weren't passenger cars, so they all had to fit in the cabin. And once he told me that the firemen needed to add coal, but there was no space because there were so many people. So they had to stop the locomotive. People needed to get out. The firemen added the coal. They re-entered the cabin and they continued traveling, which is quite hilarious. But yeah, some real life stories from PKP for you. Okay. Next miscellaneous news is Eridor mentioned that there will be, or it was on the 21st of May, so perhaps it's already in the game. As I mentioned, I don't play much single player scenarios, so I'm not sure, but at that time he mentioned that there will be a possibility of traveling between Warszawa and Kraków with every single locomotive. It was mentioned because someone asked him that there is no TLK or Intercity Warszawa-Kraków as a scenario option, and Eridor is now the developer who is responsible for scenarios in the game. So okay, we are slowly closing the episode, but before that I would like to mention some pronunciation of the Polish stations, because it just so happens that I'm Polish and I know that some of the names of the cities and stations can be quite troublesome. So coming back to the Łódź, the DLC, I would say the easiest way for the English-speaking listeners would be to start with the word would, and just instead of D at the end, I would add DGE. So Łódź should be probably the closest to the Polish pronunciation. Skierniewice and Koluszki are the big stations I have already mentioned, but just to repeat, Skierniewice and Koluszki. I mentioned especially Koluszki since I have heard from a friend of mine, non-Polish friend, who was pronouncing Koluszki as Kluski, which I find quite cute, because in Polish Kluski means dumplings or noodles, so quite cute. Finally, the sister station, the signaling station of Koluszki is Żakowice Południowe. If you signal there, you are next to the signaler of Koluszki, the first such double signaling station in the game, which is quite fun and actually got me a nice jump scare when I first log into Koluszki and I see someone sitting next to me. I thought it was a driver, but no, it was the signaler. So again, Żakowice Południowe, where południowe means south, which is almost like Opoczno, but Opoczno was południe and Żakowice we have południowe. Both means southern. Okay, that's it for the first pilot episode. Before we finish, I would like to shout out the Asian community of SimRail and their nice events. Special shoutouts to DJ Yashitaka and Empty, who were the organizers of the recent community event in SimRail. Event entailed that we stop as closest to the person standing on the platform, with the limitation that you can only apply brakes once and you cannot touch the brakes afterwards. So it's not so easy. I have tried it in an elf and I didn't notice that my elf is double elf actually, and I failed miserably, and you can see the footage in the clips and videos on Discord. So I strongly encourage you to follow the Asian community because they also announce the events, and of course the more participants are there, the more fun the events are. So shoutouts to them for organizing those. I would also like to mention my Indonesian friends, Bloody Mustard and Ataramaya, who are currently not playing, and I miss them dearly. I hope you guys will be back soon to the game. Finally, Sean the Ship and Andres, the quite vocal duo, characteristic duo, which I loved to hear because I cannot hear them anymore. They have some restrictions through the voice because some people didn't like that, and I strongly disagree, and I'm happy that they are back to the game at least, although not on voice chat. That will be it for us in the first episode.
Yeah, you can find us over on YouTube, where you're probably watching us. But you can also contact us at simrailpodcast@gmail.com if you want to provide us some feedback. But you can also leave it in the SimRail Podcast channel comments under this video.
Let us know how did it go, if you like it, if you didn't like it. Of course, please correct us, especially me. I probably made a ton of mistakes, so I will be happy to hear from you, and some constructive criticism is always welcome.
We greatly appreciate your feedback.
So that's it from us, and safe travels, and until we see each other again. Say bye.
Bye. Bye. So bad.
Okay.
I thought you were gonna say it and I was gonna say it like at the same time.
Pociąg osobowy kolei małopolskiej.
It's fine. I lost my voice a few
Planowany
times.
przyjazd
So
o godzinie 6:25
stop.
przyjedzie z opóźnieniem około 24 minut. Opóźnienie może ulec zmianie. Prosimy o zwracanie uwagi na komunikaty. Za opóźnienie pociągu przepraszamy.